Hey everybody, what's going on? Eric here. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone is doing great. Today's video is going to be about the Squier Affinity P Bass by Fender. Stay tuned. Alright, so let's talk about the Squier P Bass. Now, I've had mine for quite a while, and I love it. I really haven't had any problems with it. I end up changing out the pickups to the Seymour Duncan pickups, something pounders, I think they're called. I can't remember exactly what they're called. And it gave me what I wanted as far as tone goes. Now, I did a video of this guitar a long time ago, and it really wasn't very informative as far as a setup goes. So I had a couple of requests to kind of redo that video, so that's what I'm going to do right now. First off, we're going to need some tools. And what are you going to need? Well, you're going to need a capo, number one. You are going to need some feeler gauges. You could pick these up at any auto parts store, hardware store, whatsoever. And you're going to need some type of a ruler. I prefer inches. Now, this one here is in 8/16, 64s, and 32s. All right, this you can also pick up at any hardware store or auto parts store itself. You're going to need a 4mm Allen key. And you're going to need, well, this is kind of an iffy because you can kind of use the ruler to do it too. But I kind of like this here. It's a gauge for working on, say, action height and shit like that. Also, on the back of it, it kind of gives a list of what some recommendations are for certain types of electric bass or whatever guitars. Also, you're going to need a gauge for your radius of your neck. Now, Fenders, well, not Fenders, but the Squier bass, the radius of the neck is a 9.5, okay? So you want to make sure you kind of like match up the neck, or go to Fender's website. I'll put a link to the PDF at the bottom for this particular setup for any type of Fender guitars. It basically goes through. The only problem with it is they don't give you any specs for the neck as far as the relief goes. So that's kind of something that they prefer you take someplace to do it, but you don't have to. I have a way of doing it, and I'm sure a lot of other people have a way of doing their own neck relief, which works out just great for them. I have my own preference as well. So let's get into the guitar portion of it.
I got a gal always late. Anytime we have a date, but I love her. I'm gonna ask her, is you wills or is you ain't my baby? The way you acting lately makes me doubt. You is still my baby, baby. Seems my fling in your heart's done gone out. A woman is a creature that's always been strange. Just when you sure of one, you find she's gone and made a change. Is you is or is you ain't my baby? Maybe baby's found somebody new. But they don't, my baby is still my baby true.
Alright, so this is the Squier by Fender Affinity bass guitar. Now, it's been a great guitar, great bass. The only thing I did with it is I changed out the pickups to the Seymour Duncan ground pounders, I believe they're called. And bridge has been great. The pods have no problems at all with them as far as volume and tone goes. The output jack has been pretty stable. Haven't had any problems with that. Sorry about cutting off the top of my head. This is about the guitar, not about me. So first off, what I kind of like to do when I get a new guitar, as long as I'm not changing the strings to like a higher gauge strings, I'll use the strings that come on the guitar for my first setup. Basically making sure everything's where it's supposed to be and making any adjustments if needed. The reason why is because the strings that are already on the guitar more than likely have been stretched already. You put your own strings on the guitar and you're going to have to stretch them, and then you do your setup and then you stretch again. There might be, a little bit of a kind of a wave in your setup. And when I mean wave in your setup, it means you're going to have to go back and change things again afterwards because of those strings still stretching. Now, as long as you're not going up in gauge, the original strings on the guitar are fine. This goes for electric or bass, doesn't matter. So the first thing I'm going to end up doing with this thing is tuning it up to pitch, because more than likely it is not. And whoever ships a guitar that is in tune really should be kicked in the ass a little bit, because you really shouldn't ship a guitar in tune. You're going to have more of a problem as far as headstock breaking, cracks in the neck, shit like that. So tune it up, get her into pitch, and start your setup. All right, so let's get into the setup procedures that I do. Everybody does them a little bit differently. Some people do it the same as others. I have a little bit of a pattern of how I do it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it works for me. So first thing you want to do, tune up the guitar. First thing. Now, don't worry about the action height for right now. Right now, after you get the guitar tuned, check to see what relief you have in your neck, if any at all. Sometimes, depending on humidity, depending on temperatures and stuff, this neck might be straight as a board because of being shipped from one place to another place, unless you buy it directly off the shelf at the store. But then again, changes could occur depending on what the humidity and temperature is in your home. Wood expands and contracts. Now, this guitar here is already set up, so I'm just going to go over some of the things that I do and the specs that I set things at. So you want to check your relief in your neck. Tune up your guitar first. That way it'll put the pull on the neck, and it may give some relief or could be still straight depending on what a truss rod is set up. So capo at the first fret, right on top of it. I kind of like to use, depending on the guitar itself, I like to use a 12 thousandths, and the reason being is some guitars will say 4 thousandths, 8 thousandths for a relief. I think that is, okay. You might get a little bit of fret buzz depending on where you set your action height, but I kind of like a 12. Now, with Jackson guitars, some of them say that you can set your relief up to 20 thousandths. That to me is like way too much relief in the neck. That's like looking at like fucking put an arrow on the goddamn thing, pull it back and shoot somebody with it. I don't want to do that. So 12 thousandths is where my happy place is, and that's where I'm going with. So where the neck meets the body, you want to fret down. So let me change fingers. I don't want to seem like I'm flicking you guys off. I go 7, 8, and 9 as far as the frets go to check to see what the relief is. Again, I got 12 thousandths here, and just kind of feel your way in there. Now, don't go too much of an angle. You'll hit the string. It give you a false reading. So you want to kind of go really on top of that fret and make sure it's riding the top of that fret. And right now this one here is set at 12 thousandths, so I don't have to do anything. If this was not set at 12 thousandths and I needed to put it at 12 thousandths, I would make my adjustments with a 4mm Allen key right here at the top of the neck. And that will also say if the neck was straight and you had to add the relief to it, well, that's also going to throw your tuning off, and that's going to throw your action height off. That's why I said to set the neck relief first. So say this thing was out of whack and I had to change the relief to 12 thousandths. So now my action height is going to be pretty high. The strings are going to be a little bit loose. Retune it again. So once you get the guitar back up in tune, you check your action height, see what that's going to be like. After you check your relief again, because taking the pressure off of those strings might change the neck a little bit as far as putting the pressure back on, and it might pull in a little bit. Double check your neck first before the action height. So let's say this one's okay. Let's go back and check what my action is. So I'm going to use one of these handy dandy little cards here that gives you all the action heights. You got it in millimeters and in inches. I'm going with inches here. So at the 17th fret, let's see what the action height is after changing the neck. So I am looking at the 17th fret, 5/64 on the high side, or low side, I mean, and a 16th on the high side. So mine is fine. Like, again, I'm not going to change any settings because of this guitar has already been set up. But if you were to have to make the setups, you would go back here over at the bridge. There are 2 set screws on each side, one on each side of the saddle. Now, the problem with these is some people will take these saddles and try to make an arch with the saddles. All right, meaning that one side is lower than the other side. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that these are pretty much flat with each other. They're pretty much straight. And what you're going to do is you're going to raise each side equally to get the radius of your neck. All right, so you're not going to want to sit there and make these things look like a smiley face. All right, and kind of make them go into each other. If they're in steps where one's higher than the other one, and in a lower, kind of steps like stairs, that's fine. That's what you're looking for. But you don't want to make this into like a smiley face to where each one of them is sitting on an angle in order to get that curve. So you would adjust these accordingly to what you want as far as your action height goes. And preferably a lower action height means that the guitar is going to be easier to play, but you may have fret buzz. You may have some type of fret noise. This thing has a very minimum fret noise on it, which it works out pretty good. You can't eliminate all fret noise. You're going to get a little bit depending on how hard you pluck the string. And if you pluck it really hard, you may get a lot. But if you lightly pluck it and you get a little bit of fret noise, that's fine. I don't mind that at all. I had a big problem when I started getting into this to where, what do you consider minimum fret noise and what do you consider tolerable as far as playing? If you could play a guitar clean without having any distortion on it and you don't hear the fret noise coming through your amplifier or your headphones, whatever you're using, I would say that's pretty damn good. So that's how you set up the bridge. Now, how do you set up the inner 2 strings to go with the radius of the neck? All right, well, you're going to need either a ruler or your gauge as far as action height. I found it easier find out what the neck radius is. This one here is a 9.5. Use the gauge in order to set those 2 strings up. So if you got these guys here, your inner and outer higher and lower strings set up to where you want them to be, well, you can get the 2 center ones to fall right into place with this here. So what you want to do, you already know that the neck relief or the neck radius is a 9.5. Set this right on top, pretty close to the bridge. Make sure that you're pretty center with the handle of it, and check to see if the strings are touching, the inner strings are touching this gauge. Now, a good way to check that out is if you see that this thing is like sticking up a little bit on one side than the other, then you can adjust the inner screws for the saddles to lower that down. Again, keeping them straight and turning them equally. So right now, this one is set up with the radius of the neck. And a good way to check this out too, to tell, is that when you put this on your strings, it sounds flat. You're not putting any pressure on it, you're just holding it up against the string. See, this rings out, this doesn't. So that's how I will set up this. Now, if you want an exact reading, I will give you at the 17th fret. So I have the low string, the 4th string, top string is at a 5/64. The 2nd string on the neck, going from the top to the bottom, is right kind of like a little bit past the line of 564. So next string is right above, a little bit above the line on 1/16. And the next one is, the highest string is a 16th. Now you can go by Fender specs. The string action height might be a little bit higher than what I'm setting it at. I have mine set pretty decently to where it's comfortable for me to play. Now, pickup height, all right?
Now ask anyone for Tommy, everybody knows of me. They'll tell you where I'm riding at, bar W, X, or Y, or Z. So if you all come to Texas, look me up. But we got everything in Texas looking up. Am I right or am I rilla? Man, this state's a killadilla. If you're ever down in Texas, look me up.
All right, so let's go ahead and set up the pickup height. Now on this bass guitar, again, it is not set up with factory pickups. There's Seymour Duncans, so there's going to be a little bit of a change as far as how these would sound compared to the actual stock ones. Now, I kind of do a thing where I find out exactly like what the pickup height is supposed to be and adjust from there if need to be. I know with some guitars or pickups, if you have EMG pickups on them, they're going to be like active, and they tell you to get those strings as close to, or those pickups as close to the string as possible without touching the damn string, and work your way from there. Now, for this thing here, these are not active. What you want to do is you want to end up putting your finger on the last fret. I'm going to use a ruler for this, and let's see what we got here. So on the high string, or actually the low string, it is at 332s. Now the next string down, that's also at 332s. So on this next string down, I have this one set at, let's see here, don't want to be touching the other pickup because that's going to throw me off. It's 332s and 332s. So basically I have these even with the strings at 332s all the way down. Now you'll notice that your pickups are going to be a little bit on an angle because of the radius in the strings itself. Now let's go to the larger pickup at the bottom by the bridge, and this one I have set at 232s, just a little bit shy from 232s on the low side, or the high side I mean, and on the low side I have it set up at 332s. Now again, you know, my specs may be different from what factory would be, being because I like to, I can hear a little bit of a difference in the adjustment of what the pickup height. Right now where I have these pickups is where I want it to be, and it gives me the optimal sound that I'm looking for as far as playing. So that's it, I think. I really think that that's about it as far as the setup on this guitar, or what the specs I have mine set to. And again, you know, the specs that Fender or Ibanez, or, you know, that's the optimal specs for what they think that the guitar should play. It's not necessarily the specs that you're comfortable with. If you are a professional guitar player, I mean, you may want your action height to be a hell of a lot lower, or your neck to be straighter, or, you know, different than what they have their setup. It's whatever you're comfortable with. For a beginner like myself, you know, I've been playing around with this stuff for 4 years, and I'm still considering myself a beginner. I look for what I'm comfortable with as far as playing and how it feels to me. Again, the higher the action height, the more you're fighting that guitar to play it. So that's about it. I hope this helped with you guys that are looking for specs as far as this guitar goes, or this bass guitar goes. Again, I will put the specs that I found for Fender at the bottom in the link. It's a PDF form. You can download it if you like, and it kind of gives you some information other than what I gave you. So Peace, everyone.
Whoa, what that diddle 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 oh, he, Froggy when he courtin', he did ride Crambo. Froggy when he courtin', he did ride Lob a doodle yellow bug doodle on a ding, come a rock top bottom at Crambo.